Somewhere beneath occupied Poland, a man is lying on his stomach in a tunnel barely wide enough to fit his shoulders. He's been here before. Every day for 9 months, he's crawled to this spot, the farthest point of a passage that now stretches 150 feet back to a hole in the floor of a prison camp latrine. His tool is a spoon, a standard issue mess kit spoon, stolen from the camp kitchen, bent and scraped down to almost nothing after months of dragging it across compacted earth. Behind him, connected by a pipeline of tin cans running the length of the tunnel, a second man pumps air from a bellows made out of a canvas kit bag. That air is the only thing keeping the digger conscious. If it stops, he has minutes. The tunnel is shored with wooden slats pulled from prison beds. It's ventilated by stolen food tins. It was dug with cutlery. And tomorrow night, 5 British officers are going to crawl through it and disappear. This is Oflag XXI-B, October 1943. A POW camp on the edge of a Polish town called Sisbin that Germany swallowed into the Reich. The camp holds British Army officers captured in France, North Africa, Greece. Men who've been behind barbed wire for years. Under the Geneva Convention, they can't be forced to work, so the Germans gave them nothing to do and assumed that would be enough. It wasn't. British officers considered escape a duty, not a fantasy. Every camp ran an organized escape committee, a shadow command that coordinated tunnel projects, forged identity documents, tailored civilian clothing from uniforms, and built compasses from magnetized needles. Oflag XXI-B's committee was one of the most aggressive in the system, and in January 1943, 5 men came to them with a plan that sounded either brilliant or insane. The latrine building sat near the perimeter wire. It was foul, it was busy, and German guards avoided lingering inside. The 5 officers proposed to dig a tunnel from beneath its floor to a point beyond the fence, roughly 150 feet away. Their team would stay small to minimize the chance of exposure. Their tools would be whatever captivity provided. The committee approved it, and in January, the work began. They pried open a section of floor, dug a shaft straight down about 10 feet, turned horizontal, and started scraping toward the wire. The trapdoor was fitted back flush with the surrounding floor and smeared with the same grime that coated every surface in the building. When it was closed, it was invisible. Progress was measured in inches. One man crawled to the face and scraped with a spoon while another pumped air from above, and a third hauled dirt back to the shaft in cloth bags. They hid the excavated earth in ceiling spaces above the latrine and under floorboards, packing it into every void the building offered. The bed spring chisel, a length of wire straightened and hammered flat, handled the harder ground, but the spoons did the bulk of it. They dulled fast. Each one lasted a few weeks before the bowl was too worn to bite. Replacements had to be stolen without alerting guards who tracked inventory. Bed slats disappeared from bunks across the barracks one at a time, fitted into the tunnel as shoring frames to hold back the earth. Across the camp, mattresses sagged a little more each week. Everybody knew why. Nobody said a word. By early March, the tunnel was roughly 40 feet long. The routine was established, the team was disciplined, and the work was grinding forward. Then, on the night of March 5th, everything nearly collapsed. A separate group, a larger independent team, broke out of the same camp through a different tunnel that also originated from the latrine area. 33 officers escaped in a single night. Sirens went off, searchlights swept the compound, guards poured out, and the 5 men's tunnel hidden under the same building the Germans were about to tear apart, sat in the dark waiting to be found. The crackdown was immediate and thorough. Ferrets, the dedicated anti-escape guards, searched the latrine building with flashlights and probing rods. They found the mass escape tunnel and traced it back to its entrance, but the 5 men's trapdoor, 3 feet from the other entrance, went undetected. The Germans found one tunnel in the latrine and stopped looking for a second. It was the luckiest break of the entire project. Digging halted for weeks while the camp was locked down. Most of the 33 escapees were recaptured, and in April, the camp changed shape entirely. The Luftwaffe claimed jurisdiction over RAF prisoners and transferred them to Stalag Luft III. The most escape-active population walked out. What remained was a quieter camp, fewer guards paying attention, and 5 army officers with an unfinished tunnel that nobody on the German side knew existed. They picked up their spoons and went back underground. Through the spring and summer of 1943, the tunnel crept forward, 60 feet, 80, past 100. The deeper it went, the harder the work became. The bellows pipeline stretched so far that air reached the face thin and stale, barely enough to keep the digger functional. Headaches became constant. Grayouts happened on bad days. The man at the face and the man on the bellows were locked in a dependency that went beyond partnership. One man's consciousness hung on the other man's rhythm. Meanwhile, the dirt kept accumulating. Ceiling voids filled up, floorboard cavities packed solid. The man handling the disposal started carrying small amounts in his clothing, releasing soil through his pockets while walking the compound, and working it into the surface dirt with his boots. Every trip was a risk. Every sagging ceiling panel was a signal waiting to be read. By August, the tunnel had passed under the perimeter wire, confirmed by surface measurements, and visible from below, and pushed into free ground on the other side. The physical achievement was staggering, but the evidence above ground was growing almost as fast as the passage below it. Spoons wore out and had to be replaced. Bed slats kept disappearing. The latrine ceiling was visibly heavier. The ticking clock wasn't time, it was volume. And beneath the endurance and the ingenuity, there was the grinding, psychological weight of it all. Month after month, the same descent into the same darkness, the same scraping, the same stale air, the same knowledge that a single, thorough inspection could erase 9 months of work in a single afternoon. September. The tunnel approached 150 feet. The team shifted from horizontal digging to the most delicate work of the entire project, the exit shaft. The face scraped upward toward the surface, thinning the earth above his head inch by inch, listening for the change in texture and sound that meant open air. He left a plug of soil just thick enough to hold until escape night, thin enough to punch through with a fist. Above ground, the escape committee delivered their final supplies: forged German worker identity cards, civilian jackets and trousers tailored from dyed uniforms, maps marking routes to the Baltic coast, compasses built from magnetized needles and small tins, concentrated food, German currency. The 5 men made their final decision: how to split. 2 of them, the digger and the bellows man, the partnership that had kept each other alive underground for 9 months, would head west-northwest through Pomerania, roughly 300 kilometers to the Baltic coast, then steal a boat and try to row to Sweden. The other 3 would head directly north for Danzig, 200 kilometers, aiming for the port. Same tunnel, same 9 months, 2 different directions. October 5th was the date. A dark night near the end of the last viable month before winter storms closed the Baltic. Everything they'd built pointed at this single night. 150 feet of passage, dozens of worn-out spoons, hundreds of stolen bed slats, thousands of hours in the dark. It all came down to a few hours after lights out. October 5th, 1943. After dark, 5 men entered the latrine for the last time. They changed into civilian clothes, checked their documents and compasses, descended the shaft. One by one, they crawled 150 feet through the tunnel they had spent 9 months building. No bellows pumping now. No one left above to operate them, just whatever air remained in the passage. At the far end, the face man reached up and punched through the exit plug. Earth crumbled. Cold night air poured in. He pulled himself out into the open ground and lay flat in the grass. Stars overhead. Open sky. The camp's searchlights swept the compound behind him, inward. Always inward. They were watching the cage, not the countryside. One by one, all 5 emerged, a brief moment together. Then they split. 2 west, 3 north. They vanished. At dawn, the Germans counted 5 men short and launched a search, but they couldn't find the escape route. Ferrets searched the latrine again and walked over the trapdoor again. 5 men were gone, and the answer was under their boots. Within days, the 3-man group was stopped near Danzig, a checkpoint, a document check. Details lost to history, but the geography says everything. 200 kilometers from camp, maybe 30 from the coast. Close enough, but not close enough. They were returned to captivity. 28 days in solitary. 9 months of work ending in a cell. 300 kilometers to the west. The other 2 were still moving. They had walked for nearly a week through the Pomeranian countryside, traveling at night, hiding by day, their forged papers holding up at every encounter. They reached the Baltic coast and found what they needed, a small fishing boat with oars. Not built for open water, built for the shore. They took it anyway. They pushed off into the Baltic Sea in October and rowed. 50 miles of open water. Temperatures cold enough to kill them in an hour if they went in. They navigated by their tin can compass and whatever stars appeared between the clouds. Wind picked up. Spray came over the side. They rode in shifts through the night, arms burning, soaked through and through, the horizon empty in every direction. The same 2 men who had spent 9 months connected by a pipeline of tin cans in a tunnel under a latrine were now connected by a pair of oars and a stolen boat on a freezing sea. The tunnel had tested patience. The sea tested everything else. Hours passed. The wind shifted, the sky lightened, and eventually, through the gray, a coastline appeared. Sweden. They made landfall on the southern coast. 2 wrecked, salt-crusted men in a stolen fishing boat. And the war was over for them. Swedish authorities processed them through diplomatic channels. And within weeks, they were back in Britain, sitting in front of MI9 intelligence officers, telling the story of the Spoon Tunnel from beginning to end. Someone wrote it all down and entered the record. 2 men had dug their way out of prison camp with cutlery and rowed across the sea to prove it. Back in Poland, the tunnel kept it secret for 2 more weeks. The Germans knew 5 men were missing but couldn't explain how. Then, around October 19th, the earth settled. Rain had soaked the ground above the unattended passage. Without maintenance, a section of ceiling gave way. A depression appeared outside the wire. Guards traced it back to the latrine and finally found the trapdoor they'd been stepping over since January. Inside, they found everything. Worn spoons, bed slat frames, the flattened bed spring chisel, the deflated kit bag, 150 feet of tin cans fitted end to end. The tunnel told its own story in abandoned tools. The 3 recaptured officers served their solitary confinement and returned to the general population. They would spend 19 more months as prisoners. In January 1945, as Soviet forces pushed into Poland, the Germans marched their POWs westward through winter, the long march that killed thousands. The 3 men who dug a tunnel with spoons and walked 200 kilometers toward freedom now walked again, this time at gunpoint, through snow. They survived. They were liberated in May 1945 and went home, 2 years after their partners had reached Sweden. All 5 men lived through the war, 2 freed by spoons and salt water, 3 freed by time. The tunnel they built was never detected by German intelligence, never betrayed by an informer, never found by a search. It was revealed only when the earth itself gave way, as if the passage had held together exactly as long as it needed to, for exactly the men who needed it, and then let go. 150 feet, dug with spoons. 5 men in, 2 to Sweden, 3 to Danzig. And the dirt that buried the evidence was the same dirt they'd scraped out 1 handful at a time for 9 months, in the dark, with the most ordinary object the soldier owns.